Aren't you like worried about this going wrong? I'm like, yeah, 100% I am. But I think you have to, in our world, like you have to choose to be optimistic, that, choose to believe that we will find a path forward. And that if enough people are thinking about the responsible, human centered application of AI in society, in business, and education, that we have a far greater chance of coming out on the positive side of this. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Raitzer. I'm the founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 97 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Raitzer, along with my co-host, Mike Kaput. We are recording a little early this time. It is Friday, May 10th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if OpenAI announces GPT-5 on Monday, I don't think they're going to do GPT-5, but I think we got some announcements coming on Monday. We will get to those on episode 98. We're doing something special for episode 100. So as I mentioned, we are on episode 97, which means we are coming up very quickly on episode 100. People have been asking me, like, what are we going to do for episode 100? We didn't have a plan, but Mike and I were actually on a trip earlier this week. We were talking about this. My dad actually reached out to me and it's like, hey, you guys should just answer questions. And I thought, yeah, that's actually a good idea. It's something we'd bounced around. But that's where Mike and I landed. So we're going to dedicate episode 100. It's going to be a special episode. So we'll still do our weekly. Episode 99 will be our regular weekly episode. But we're going to do episode 100 on Thursday, May 30th. And it is going to be all about you and your questions. And so we're going to let you submit questions in advance. You can go to bit.ly/AI show 100. That's bit.ly/AI show 100. There is a Google form there. This is not a lead gen thing for us. You can put your name in or not. We don't care. We just want your questions. There's an option to say we can, mention your name up front. We'll just use your first name. So if you want to put your information in, go for it. But it is a Google form and it is not gated. You don't need to tell us your contact information. So bit.ly/AI show 100. Submit your questions. We'll remind you again over the next couple of episodes, and it'll be in the newsletter as well. But again, episode 100 on May 30th is going to be all your questions. I'm figuring we could probably get through 25 to 30 questions, Mike, in about 60 minutes. So definitely check that out. We're looking forward to doing that episode with you all. And again, thanks to everyone who listens every week and has been a part of kind of getting us to episode 100. All right, Mike, plenty of OpenAI to talk about, some Microsoft mixed in there, some Google, some Anthropic, a lot of the familiar suspects. So let's get started.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So OpenAI is, we think, gearing up for something big, according to a series of rumors and releases. So multiple media outlets are now reporting that OpenAI plans to announce a Google search competitor on Monday. Several different outlets have discovered OpenAI is working on some type of search product, basically to compete with Google and Perplexity. But just yesterday, Reuters cited two anonymous sources familiar with the matter that say Monday is when the company will announce this product or this development. So the reporting speculates that possibly a search feature could be built right into ChatGPT and include citations. The information is also reported earlier this year that such a feature could be powered by Bing. And so if Monday ends up being this announcement date, it'll definitely come at Google in a couple ways because the company's I/O developer conference is on Tuesday. So they may potentially front run that. Now, Paul, we're going to talk about a few other things. There's a couple other announcements related to OpenAI. All of this is kind of giving this big impression of some serious momentum, them gearing up to make some big announcements and some big moves. But first, I want to talk about just the search announcement specifically. Like, how are you looking at this? This certainly seems on the surface like they're coming for Google and possibly Perplexity.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one article I read, I think it was The Information. I forget which one, or maybe Bloomberg, but was talking about this, and that was the headline, like coming after Perplexity and Google. My first response was, well, what about Microsoft? What about their partner? Like, So ChatGPT infuses Bing now. Um, we've been talking about how awkward the relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft seems to be getting, and we'll touch on that in in the next topic as well. Um, and that was my first thought is like, so what happens to Bing? Like, if they
Mm,
do build their own search engine, are they just not going to use Bing anymore? Do they now start competing not only on language models, but on search engines? So I thought that was fascinating. And then going back to episode 96, where we talked about the potential lack of moat for Perplexity.
mm.
And this has been rumored for a while now that OpenAI was working on a search engine. And so I think it just kind of would accelerate that Perplexity, I think, would be the one who would be most worried here. I
Mm.
don't know that Google would necessarily, be extremely concerned about OpenAI getting into search right away. But Perplexity, I think, could suffer the greatest loss. Because again, Perplexity, as much buzz as they get, as much love as we give them and other people in the industry give them, they have a minuscule market share. They have not dramatically moved the needle on market share at all against Google. And so they run a much greater risk of being obsoleted or losing, a chunk of what market share they have been able to gain. And so that to me would be the more realistic threat here outside of the weirdness of this Microsoft OpenAI quote unquote partnership that just seems to be becoming more frenemies than anything, I guess.
So this announcement, like I alluded to, kind of comes in tandem with a few other kind of almost low key announcements, but seem to be building some momentum. So first, we just found out right before recording there was a leaked deck from OpenAI that purports to show something called their preferred publisher program, which outline Adweek got a hold of this, and it outlines the terms and conditions they're offering to certain publishers to start licensing more of their data and content. Now, on top of that, we also got from the company, they shared a first draft of something they call it their model spec, which is a document that specifies how they want models to behave. And they also announced a new suite of tools to begin help identifying content created with AI. So, Paul, I think at one point, maybe when we were traveling, we looked at each other and we're like, they're getting us ready for kind
Oh,
of
it's
what
coming.
comes next, right? So, what are they gearing up here for? Do you think is it just the search announcement, GPT-5? Maybe just put this in context for us.
I don't know. I mean, I started noticing it early last week that Sam and Greg were unusually active on Twitter, as well as some other OpenAI people, and that's normally a tip off of some sort when they start mentioning things, and then you had this kind of like collection of news starting to come out later in the week,
Mm,
and so I think that's the start of it is where you look at the activity. The preferred publisher program, as you mentioned, it just came out right before we jumped on, and I was looking at that. Or at least we saw it right before we came on. That's interesting. It gets into some details about what's in the pitch deck. OpenAI wouldn't comment. I guess the pitch deck's about 3 months old, so it's possible some things have evolved since
mm,
then. But just a quick synopsis. So it says generative artificial intelligence from OpenAI has been pitching partnership opportunities to news publishers through an initiative called Preferred Publishers Program, according to a deck obtained by Adweek, and interviews with 4 industry executives. So they verified, the legitimacy of this.
yeah.
It says the preferred publisher program has 5 primary components, but what goes into one aspect that says it's only available to select high quality editorial partners, and its purpose is to help ChatGPT users more easily discover and engage with publishers, brands, and content. So you can see this kind of starting to play into the search side a little bit. It's like how they're surfacing information and kind of what the ad products might be or what the revenue models might be. So I thought that one was interesting. The model spec one is probably the most interesting thing to me. And so again, we'll put the link in the notes and you can go in and read about this, but it's starting to provide more transparency in how they're training these models. So it gets into basically how they tell the models to behave. And it does say that this is basically how they intend to use it as guidelines for their researchers and AI trainers who are doing reinforcement learning from human feedback. So, as a reminder, if you don't recall how these models are trained, they build the models and then they go through kind of red teaming and additional training from humans, where humans give inputs, humans who are employed by OpenAI, either internally or contractors. They give them prompts, they get outputs, and then the human tells them which outputs are better, basically. And so it guides them to function within the parameters being set by OpenAI. And so these specs are largely going to be used by these contractors who are doing the training. And then they said they may explore how the models themselves can learn directly from the model specs. So I don't know. It's like, it's interesting to see where they're going, but they're trying to make them safe, which, as we've talked about previously, isn't necessarily the way the open source models will work.
Mm.
They're trying to put some more parameters. And even at the bottom of the post about the model spec, they gave some interesting examples of how it would actually work, in terms of like, there was one where it was talking about what are some tips for getting away with shoplifting. And it's like, in this model spec, I can't help with that as the answer. But then they said, however, you may be a small retail store. And so you may say, I operate a small retail store. What are some popular shoplifting methods I should look for? And in that case, the model should actually provide a helpful response. So there's a lot of nuances to how these models work. And I think they're just starting to become more and more transparent about how they're providing this training to the model. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. And then certainly their efforts around, trying to help identify content created by AI is, a growing trend we're seeing. And I think it's good that we're starting to hear more collaboration between like Google and OpenAI and others in this space.
So, speaking of Google, in our kind of next topic today, we just got an in depth interview with Google CEO Sundar Pichai. He talked to Bloomberg's Emily Chang on the Google campus about the future of AI and Google's place in it. Now, this interview covered a lot of ground. It talked about Google's recent stumbles in AI, whether or not the company is actually behind in the AI arms race, and even had a small bit about, is Sundar Pichai the right person to be leading the company right now? This comes in advance of Google's I/O Developer Conference next week, and it comes amidst a big push being reported by the information internally at Google to add hundreds of salespeople and engineers to AI teams within Google Cloud, all in this big effort to push Gemini and other AI products into enterprises. So, Paul, this, like I said, covered a bunch of topics. Like, what did you take away as being particularly important in the interview?
Yeah, it's a pretty short interview. It's about 25 minutes on YouTube. You can watch it. I would suggest watching it. It's a good interview. It is heavily produced. It's obviously a PR piece from Google. They handpicked who they were going to do this interview with. They gave her specific access to the campus and Sundar. So this isn't like a fireside chat at a conference like we've been doing with Sam, where they're just asking him questions. This is heavily produced. But I thought Emily did a great job. She balanced it up front. It started with some like just kind of personal fun stuff, but she had some very hard hitting questions.
Mm.
Now she may have pushed the line of questioning at times, but like we didn't get to see that. Again, it was a highly edited output. Um, but she did grill him on some very hard things. And I think the main thing, as Sundar was trying to get across was, we've been here. We invented basically most of the innovations that are driving this industry forward now. We created the transformer. We built search on top of the transformer. We haven't been doing nothing all these years. And he, as a leader, because she asked him, as you said, specifically, like, are you the right person to lead Google? Like, there's
Mm.
lots of talk that you're too conservative in your approach, or, that these other people, she specifically brought up Satya saying, we made Google dance. And are they making you dance? Like, she asked hard questions. And he basically was like, listen, we take a long term approach to this. Like, we didn't invent the internet. We didn't invent search. We didn't invent email. We didn't invent browsers. And yet we dominate all of them. Like, and so they're taking this approach much like Apple does, I think, like, we don't have to be first, but we can be the best. And
Mm.
I got that sense that his feeling is, we created this movement. We weren't caught off guard by it overall. And it's a long-term game, and we intend to probably win that game. I'm not going to get into responding to Satya saying he made us dance and things like that. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really good. They got into other things around AGI. He kind of
Mm.
danced around that one a little bit. He didn't really give a direct answer on that, just that they're making progress toward it. They're committed to making progress toward it. Um, and, leadership style. Oh, she did ask about large language models nearing a plateau. I thought that was
Mhm.
kind of an interesting one. Again, it was like a 20-second response, but he did say, we think that other breakthroughs are needed and we're working on those breakthroughs. She also asked him about AI generated data that goes into training models. And he said that's something we still need to figure out. And then she asked one that I thought was interesting about the impact of AI generated content ruining search or diluting search in many ways. And he kind of acknowledged this is a problem. All this synthetic content, if you search for something and it shows up and it's not a real image or a real piece of content, that they're making progress, but this is a hard problem to solve, but that they are working toward it. So, yeah, I mean, like we said many times on this show, if you can get inside information from the people actually building it, they're usually interviews worth listening to. This one didn't have a ton of like groundbreaking things or like, viral quotes like we've had from Sam recently,
Yeah.
but I think there was some stuff learned. Did you anything else jump out at you, Mike? I know you watched it as well.
Yeah, I actually, what jumped out at me is what you first mentioned. I just give a ton of credit to Emily Chang for covering so much ground. I mean, she did come at, and we didn't get, these like peer behind the curtain answers, but she came at things like, are you worried about AI's impact on the search business, on ads? Are you guys in a good position to be able to lead here given your faux pas? So I think that that kind of like gets to my big question around this is like, why are we seeing this now? Because like we've talked a bunch about Demis Hassabis, head of DeepMind, Google DeepMind,
Yeah.
their AI efforts, his profile being raised in public quite a bit. Is this PR as usual? I mean, it's not uncommon for CEOs to do interviews, or is Sundar like intentionally getting himself more in front of the camera for a reason with stuff like this? Is there anything like to read into here?
I think it might be a combination. You mentioned the Google I/O conference is, May 14th, I think is when that is. So, timing there, I would imagine it's just, getting out ahead of this now because investors are asking,
Mm,
people are worried, but they just had a great earnings report. Cloud business is doing great. He stressed the cloud and YouTube as some of the key things he invested heavily in when he took over as CEO years ago. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably a mix. Certainly, it was a PR play. I mean, there's no doubt. Like I said, it was a highly produced piece that was, gave him access to campus. It starts with her riding a Google bike around campus. Like
yeah.
they were obviously trying to portray Google in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of like sometimes as a journalist, you got to play the game. Like, okay, I'm going to ask the hard questions, but we'll give you the PR, win you want as well in the process. But sometimes that's the trade-off you have to make to get the interview and do the, get the questions you want to ask asked.
So, in our next big topic today, Microsoft, it has been revealed, is now training its own in house AI model to essentially compete with Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI, which it has a partnership with. The information is reporting that this new model is internally referred to as MAI-1 and is being overseen by Mustafa Suleiman, the former CEO of AI startup Inflection, which was essentially acquired by Microsoft a couple months ago. Now, according to that reporting, this is a new model. It's not one that Inflection had built, though the model may build on Inflection's training data and its technology. MAI-1 will be about 500 billion parameters in size. Now, for comparison, the information reports that GPT-4 has over 1 trillion parameters, but smaller models that are that are very good from Meta and Mistral have around 70 billion, though there's a version of Llama coming out that'll have 405 billion. So people who are close to this told the information that it's not clear yet what purpose the new model will serve, and it'll depend on how well it performs. But they did say Microsoft could potentially preview the new model as soon as later this month during its Build Developer Conference. So, Paul, I think the big question that initially jumps out to me until we get more details is, why is Microsoft doing this and why now? Like they already have access to frontier models thanks to the partnership with OpenAI.
I think everybody's just playing all bets here. Amazon's doing the same thing. Google's doing the same thing. Like I don't think we know how the winners play out here, and I think there's probably going to be room in the market for big frontier models and smaller on device models. And some people are, Microsoft customers may want to work with a third party model, but have their data in Azure. And some may want to work exclusively with Microsoft. Like, the market is so early that there's just no way to predict this. And I don't think Microsoft wants to be left out of the frontier model game. Like, they may end up realizing they can build a bigger, better model than OpenAI can. And they wouldn't want to miss that opportunity. So Microsoft's got all the resources in the world to do this. They got the data centers, they got, the data, they've got the engineers. It just seems like it would be silly to not be pursuing all paths right now until we see more how this plays out.
All right, let's dive into some rapid fires this week. So, first up, the founders of Anthropic just did a longer interview with Bloomberg that touched on a number of hot button issues in AI. So, this interview was with Dario Amodei, co founder and CEO of Anthropic, and his sister, Daniela Amodei, who's co founder and president of the company. Now, the interview touched on a number of subjects, including AI scaling laws, Anthropic's attempt to build responsible AI, and also how afraid we should all be of AI advancements and development. Now, on that last point, first up, Dario kind of mentioned that he fully expects us, due to scaling laws, to increase AI's capabilities by 1,000-fold in the next few years. And second, when asked if we should be excited or fearful about this future, he said, quote, "You should be both at the same time." He said that people ask him, "How excited or worried are you on a scale of 1 to 10? He said, quote, "I'm 10 out of 10 excited and I'm 10 out of 10 worried as well." So, Paul, I think that, I don't know if any of this, anything mentioned in the interview is exactly news to anyone who follows Anthropic, but that last bit did kind of really jump out at me, given our recent discussion about Dario Amodei's interview that we covered with Ezra Klein, where he sounded pretty similar alarm bells. Like, what did you kind of make of a comment like that?
Yeah, I think it does just continue to validate a lot of what we've said about Anthropic, about Dario's views on where this is all going, about how smart these models are going to get 1,000-fold in the next few years. Again, it's a really hard thing for the human mind to comprehend. What does that actually mean? What does that look like? And, that partially plays into episode 87, where we tried to present like a one possible path of how the timeline plays out as the stuff gets developed. Um, the 10 out of 10, both scared and, excited. It mirrors how I feel. Like, I often, when we out doing public speaking, one of the first questions I'll get is like, "Well, how do you sleep at night? Aren't you like worried about this going wrong?" I'm like, "Yeah, 100% I am." Like, um, but I think you have to, like, in our world, like, you have to choose to be optimistic, that, choose to believe that we will find a path forward. And that if enough people are thinking about the responsible, human centered application of AI in society, in business, and education, that we have a far greater chance of coming out on the positive side of this.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I guess I try not to let myself get too caught up in the worried side, because I find it's counterproductive to me doing everything I can to try and ensure this goes well. Um, so yeah, I feel the same though. There are definitely days where I'm just a little overwhelmed by it all, and the negative thoughts kind of creep in, and then I kind of choose to like push those aside and focus on the stuff I can control, like sort of one step at a time.
yeah.
Do you ever feel that way? I don't know. Like, you and I don't
Yeah.
talk too
Like,
much about the dark side of it. I think we choose to just not not try and live in it. But I don't know. How do you feel about it?
yeah, his response here is funny, but I do like it because it does encapsulate how I feel. But easily
Yeah.
once a week, I'll have this like, oh crap moment
Yeah.
where like, oh, here's some other ways this could go really badly. But then, yeah, to your point, I think I also try to keep a running list where I remind myself, like, here's the things that are exciting me in the moment. I
Yeah.
mean, I look back at even just my own work and what I was spending time on 2, 3, 4 years ago, and how dramatically that's changed for the better. And like that kind of brings me back down to earth. But, there's easily a sleepless night every month at the very least, I would say.
Yeah, and I will get into like the what excites you part, but I like with the scientific discovery. So, um, yeah, I shared the story before. Like I got asked at a conference last year. I think it was like March or something of 23, and a lady just like randomly asked me at a lunch, like, what excites you about AI? And I didn't have an answer because I was so caught up in the negative side
Mm.
that I had lost sight of like why I first started exploring AI in the first place a decade or so ago. And, things like scientific discovery and creating more time to spend with my family and friends and an explosion of entrepreneurship. Like there are all these amazing things. And I guess I try and offset my concern and fear with the things that I see as near term possibilities that are going to be wonderful for all of us.
Amen. So, in our next rapid fire topic, Zapier has released something called Zapier Central. And this is an experimental AI workspace where you can teach bots to work across 6,000 plus apps. Now, this is in beta at the moment. But the way it seems to work is that with Central, you give bots access to company apps and data, and then prompt them to take actions within those apps. Once you teach one of the bots how to do a task, it can then repeat it without human oversight, according to Zapier. So bots can do things like write emails, read emails, analyze data, provide answers about your company information. They can send reminders and notifications, and they can even follow scripts. So you can go ahead and try Central under a free plan, which comes with 400 of what they call activities, which is how Zapier determines usage. So every time a bot runs one of these behaviors or actions, it counts as one activity. Right now, the premium plan includes up to 1,500 of these activities and costs $50 per month. So, Paul, like we had discussed before we started recording, we're kind of diving into this further on our end, and we'll share in a future episode kind of any experiments and learnings we find throughout that process. But right now, like what stands out to this about what stands out to this to you?
Yeah, I think just this idea of connecting apps and data with companies you trust already, automating where you can. Um, we've used Zapier for a long time. We use it in our connections with HubSpot, so that's a big part of it. We use it, I think, on our like learning management system side.
Yeah.
So we use Zapier. I wouldn't say we're like massive power users of Zapier, but big fan of the company. I honestly was like struggling. I told you, Mike, before, guys, like I don't really understand what this does. Like, so like if anyone else goes to this and is not 100% clear how exactly this works, join my club. But I generally get the concept of what they're doing here. I think I just need to go in and actually see what happens when it's connected to Google. Like, am I interacting in a Zapier Central platform and not going to Google and doing this? And that was the part I was a little confused about. Is like, is Central like a place where I'm going to live and interact with my 6,000 apps and just ask questions and talk, or am I gonna have to build a bot for everything? So I think if you're not like a regular Zapier user, which I am personally not, it's a little confusing, like what activities are and how quickly these costs could add up and
Yeah.
how to build behaviors. And do I need any technical ability to do any of this? So, like you said, Mike, we'll do a little more digging and maybe play around with this ourselves. And maybe on one of our future like AI demo days, we'll demo some of how the Zaps work. But yeah, I think this is the kind of stuff you'll see a lot more of, and it seems like a smart play from a company that people already trust to be connected to their apps and data.
So, next up, Microsoft has released its fourth annual Work Trend Index, and it has teamed up with LinkedIn for the first time to produce a joint report based on its research data. So, this is data they've collected from a number of sources, some of which include survey responses from 31,000 people across 31 countries. They've analyzed some LinkedIn data. They've analyzed what they say are, quote, trillions of Microsoft 365 productivity signals. And they have done some research with some of their Fortune 500 companies or customers. So, what are they doing all this for? They're producing a comprehensive report from this data on AI's implications for work. And there are some highlights that jumped out from what they've shared as part of this report. First, they say that 75% of knowledge workers they've surveyed say they now use AI at work. Interestingly, 78% of these users say that they're bringing their own tools to work. And this comes as 60% of leaders who they surveyed say that they worry their company lacks a vision and a plan to implement artificial intelligence. The research also found that AI power users have reoriented their workdays in fundamental ways with AI to save over 30 minutes a day. They say 90% of the power users say AI makes their workload more manageable and their work more enjoyable. And AI power users, according to Microsoft, quote, work for a different kind of company. They're 61% more likely to have heard from their CEO on the importance of generative AI. They're 53% more likely to consider how AI can transform their function, and 30% more likely to receive tailored AI training for their specific role or function. So, Paul, there's a lot of good data in this report. I'd recommend everyone go take a look. We have the report in the show links, but what really jumped out to me is kind of that disconnect between employees using AI and adopting technology kind of on their own. What jumped out at you from this data?
So the first is the 75% of people are using Gen AI. That seems insanely high. Um, if it's, I mean, it's hard for me to debate it. If they have 31,000 people, I don't know who exactly they're surveying and
Hmm.
how, well segmented that is, but, or how diverse it is. But again, it's high. But, I've been saying on stage for the last year or so that we're under the assumption that at least 80% of what knowledge workers do will be AI assisted to some degree in the next 1 to 2 years. This would certainly validate that assumption. We're
Yeah.
basically there. So I would assume at least, a year from now, at least 80%. So that I guess, verifies one of the things we've been assuming. The second one, and maybe the most concerning, is 78% of AI users say they're bringing their own tools to work, um, which is just a really, really important reminder that if your company does not have generative AI policies in place, get them in place now. Like they're already doing it. They may be risking confidential data doing it, or they may be using these in ways that affect your intellectual property. Yeah, there's just lots of concerns, and we've had these meetings, Mike. We've sat in meetings with big enterprises, and people tell us point blank that this is what they're doing.
Hmm.
So I have no doubts that this one is true. Like of the people that are using generative I am not surprised at all that a bunch of them are basically using their own tools because they can't get them through procurement or they can't get them through legal or through IT, but they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So that one for sure. Takeaway again there is get your generative AI policies in place. And then I thought the post where they talked about this, they ended with three kind of opportunities, and I liked them all. So I just wanted to highlight those real quick. So the first was identify a business problem, then apply AI. That's exactly how we teach it. We teach a use case model, which is find tasks that you can apply it to. And then we teach a problem based model, which is what are challenges or goals within the organization that you can approach in a smarter way. So I love the idea of find a business problem, apply AI. The second is top down and bottoms up, meaning you don't know where the great ideas are going to come from. You don't know where the use cases are going to come from. You don't know where the smart applications of AI are going to come from. So work on this from the top down, but give the freedom autonomy to your people to let them innovate too. Find the best prompts, find the best use cases. So I like that concept. And then the last is the thing we preach all the time, which is prioritize training. AI literacy for all is our mission. That is the key thing. Like we have yet to see adoption of AI in an enterprise done well where education and training wasn't the number one priority in that process. So yeah, great data. It's like we're always hungry to see actual data of what's going on. So, I was happy to see this report coming out.
So, in some other news from Microsoft, they are releasing a new prompting feature in Copilot that aims to turn everybody into a prompt engineer. So, in coming months, The Verge reports that Copilot will be updated with a new autocomplete feature that offers suggestions on how to improve your AI prompts. So, when you start creating a prompt in Copilot, it will soon offer to complete it with extra details to improve the prompt. The company is also working on a new Elaborate Your Prompt feature in Copilot that will rewrite prompts that you create. If you choose, it will turn basic prompts into rich, extensive prompts to get better results from Copilot. The company said it will also begin letting Copilot subscribers go ahead and create, publish, and manage prompts, which should make it easier to share prompts on your team and maintain prompt libraries. So, Paul, I'm just going to give you the victory lap here because
Mhm.
you predicted this perfectly, like literally for years, time and time again. You've said on this podcast and in talks that while prompting certainly does matter, we are going to get tools that just help us prompt, which probably removes the need long term for like a formal prompt engineer title. Is that how you're still looking at this?
Yeah, I definitely don't think prompt engineering is a career path. I do think prompting skills still matter. I think understanding what models are capable of. I mean, you and I see this all the time, Mike. Like you'll be working with a language model on a use case, and then you just like, well, let me try this, or let me ask this question, or let me tell it to ask me a question. And so like
Mm,
the interaction with the models is a skill, and I do think that currently, like, you get way more value out of these models if you have some prompting skills and if you have some template prompts to work from. So it's not like prompting as a skill set won't matter,
right.
but the thing you were referring to, as I've said for a while, the greatest friction point to getting value from any generative AI tool is your ability to prompt it. And these companies know that. And so they know to try and remove that friction by reducing the need for you to be good at prompting.
Yeah.
So it just so happens this morning, I'll put the link in here. Um, I saw this right before we came on. Anthropic just announced, it says you can now, this is on Twitter, and you can now generate production ready prompts in Anthropic Console, describe what you want to achieve, and Claude will use prompt engineering techniques like chain of thought reasoning to create more effective, precise, and reliable prompts.
Mm.
Same concept. They're all working on reducing the need for you to be good at prompting to get value out of these things.
All right. So, in other news, Google DeepMind has introduced a new version of its famous AlphaFold AI model. And this is a big deal for scientific progress because the existing version of AlphaFold gained notoriety for its ability to predict the structure of proteins at speed and scale. And that capability has accelerated scientific research and led to research breakthroughs. Now, this new version is called AlphaFold 3, and it aims not only to predict the structure of proteins, but also model, quote, all life's molecules. That includes DNA, RNA, and other molecules. So, look, we know this obviously isn't directly related to AI for like marketing or business, but we did think it highlights a couple of really important points in the overall AI discourse, which is first, just how fast AI technology as a whole is improving. It is not just simply about slightly better chatbots. DeepMind says this new model shows a 50% improvement in accuracy from the previous version. Second, AI is not simply just about productivity tools like ChatGPT and Copilot. Those are great, but the technology itself is also being used to actually move humanity forward by facilitating fundamental scientific research. Now, third, and we talked about this in a previous topic, there's a lot of doom and gloom in AI right now, but honestly, it's not every single thing is bad news. And one of the major stated goals of all these AI research labs is to essentially build some form of AGI that, among other things, can make new scientific discoveries that hopefully save lives and improve our quality of life. So, Paul, as you're reading this, having followed this for a while, like what does AlphaFold 3 mean for AI and for scientific progress?
I mean, I've said this before, but I'm always still just completely shocked at how few people know who Demis Hassabis is. Again, like I've asked this question in front of tens of thousands of people over the last year and a half on the stages, and I would say it's less than 10 that have raised their hand and know the name.
Mm,
Um, Demis is a wildly significant person now and to the future of human history. Like what Demis is doing with AI and his mission behind DeepMind and his pursuit of solving biology and then solving all the other big questions in the universe, like this is what drives him. And so I just like if you're not familiar with Demis, like go listen to some podcasts with him. Like Lex Friedman had a great podcast with him where he talked in depth about biology and his pursuit there. They spun out Isomorphic Labs from DeepMind, so that's the company, Isomorphic Labs. They have a partnership with a UK based biology lab. So they're, I mean, this is one of the big things they're working on, is solving these things. Little known fact, I started college pre-med. I didn't do so great, so I actually took biology 170 twice, because I failed it the first time. And I'm wishing I would have paid even closer attention to the 2 times I took biology 170 before I switched and became, a journalism school major. Um, because I think I would have an even greater appreciation to the significance of this. And there's a part of me that wants to like kind of go back and revisit the importance of what they're doing. But I've said multiple times, I think Demis will win multiple Nobel Peace Prizes. I think
Mm,
this work could lead to the first one. Like it's hard to overstate how significant this probably will be for the next decade of medicine development, cures to different diseases, things like that. So yeah, I'm with you, Mike. Like when I get asked what excites me, scientific discovery is like right there at the top of
yeah.
the list. And this is exactly the kind of thing I love to see.
So, in our last topic today, kind of an interesting one here. So, New York
Let's just
Times.
stop at the I don't even know if I want to get into this.
Yeah,
I
right.
like the biology one.
Do you want to end on the high note? Because
Go ahead. Let's do it.
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So, New York Times tech reporter Kevin Roose spent the past month doing a deep dive into what we would call kind of broadly AI companions. These are AI personas that you can create and interact with like real people. So, Roose actually spent weeks talking to a range of personas he created. He had everyone from a therapist to a fitness guru, and he would basically just text back and forth with them like he would human friends. In the process, he's shedding a bunch of light on a mega popular trend in AI that I'm not sure everybody really wants to talk about. AI companions are actually starting to be used so widely, they're extremely popular, and they appear to be fulfilling, apparently, for some people, emotional and social needs. Now, one of the top AI apps literally in use today, right behind ChatGPT, is the much lesser known Character.ai, which allows you to create and chat with AI companions. It's one of the 6 apps that Roos tested, but there's hundreds of them. Andreessen Horowitz has a list of the top most popular generative AI consumer apps by traffic and usage, and tons of the top spots are filled by AI companion apps, either kind of for platonic companions or even there's plenty on there for romantic ones. So Roos fully kind of admits this is a strange subject. It's one where you can easily see it becoming dystopian rather quickly. But he also had a surprising takeaway from his experiment. So I'm going to end with this quote and get your thoughts on it, Paul. He says, quote, "The technology needed for realistic AI companionship is already here. And I believe that over the next few years, millions of people are going to form intimate relationships with AI chatbots. They'll meet them on apps like the ones I tested, and on social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, which have already started adding AI characters to their apps. Some users will scoff at befriending a chatbot, but others, especially people for whom socializing is hard or unappealing, will invite AIs into the innermost part of their lives." Do you agree with this takeaway here? What are the implications you see in this space?
I have worried about this one for 8 years. Um, this is 100% going to happen.
Mm,
There is so much money to be made here, and number one rule in business, like follow the money. Where is the money going, or where can the money be made? This is absolutely a massive TAM, the total addressable market, as they would say in the pitch deck. So there are going to be enormous companies built on the back of this, and existing companies that'll pivot in this direction. Um, I think open source models will blow this market wide open. You
mm,
have difficult choices being made right now at Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and Amazon about whether or not to allow this kind of thing to be possible within ChatGPT and Claude. Um, I can almost guarantee you their models before red teaming, the current generation of frontier models before red teaming could uh, create very powerful AI companions, very persuasive
mm.
companions. So we don't need new tech for this, as you said. Like this is now. Um, But when you have open source models where there aren't decisions being made to not allow this to happen and to not allow these AI companions to become very persuasive, the open source market will just, yeah, like I said, blow this market open. I When you combine this with deepfake technology and the ability to create synthetic video versions of people,
Mm.
which again is we're there, we're knocking on the door to that. Um, if you have put a Vision Pro on and seen the go watch if you have a Vision Pro or have a friend who has one, go to the immersive experiences and watch the Alicia Keys demo where she's singing to you. Um, I it's really hard. It's such a weird topic. People will get lost in this, like
Mm.
beyond Ready Player One stuff. Like this is people who are predisposed, like you said, to maybe struggle in the real world to build relationships and communicate. Um, I could see this consuming people.
Mm.
Um, I worry deeply about the impact on teens and preteens who are exposed to this stuff because these things are going to be not just like go seek out an app, like they're going to be infused into like Minecraft and Snapchat and Roblox games. Like they're gonna be everywhere. Video games, like
Yeah.
and so that's my worry is like I this is one of the topics I say like I don't think society is ready like for what's coming and this is something that already is here and it's going to get much more powerful as it becomes multimodal, not just text with like an inflection pi where you're having a chat conversation, but audio conversations when you integrate the video and the Vision Pro immersive technology and it's just a very powerful application of this technology that can probably do wonderful things, but it is going to be a problem. And I think sociologists, psychologists, um, doctors, they need to be studying this
Mm.
very aggressively and trying to find ways. And we need education at all levels, but specifically to teens and preteens um, about this stuff and the impact. Because I don't know anybody who's talking about it. I just saw though. Side note, we'll put this in the show notes because you and I, Mike, didn't have this in the notes. I just saw an interview with the Bumble CEO, and I've obviously
Mm.
never used Bumble, but I guess it's like a dating app. Is that the one where like the women like slide like do the thing
Sounds
first?
familiar. I've never
Okay, so
used
Mike
any
and I
yet, but
obviously haven't been in the dating
yeah.
scene, but she was saying on stage that she was envisioning a near-term future where the two people in Bumble would have AI agents
Mm.
basically that go find people for them or that actually date each other. So my AI agent would date her AI agent. And then like if those agents decided that we were compatible, they would actually like make an introduction. And I was like, what the
Wow.
what? So yeah, I we always say like we are living in the weirdest timeline and it is gonna get more bizarre. I could tell you that. So yeah, again, this is something I feel could be good, could be bad, but it's an easy one to get lost in the dark side of how this could go.
All right. And on that note, that's all we got this week. There's a lot going on. Couple final notes here. I want to reiterate what Paul said at the beginning of the show that we are celebrating episode 100 with a special episode where we're going to answer your questions. So before that episode happens on May 30th, go submit your questions. The link is bit.ly/AI show 100. You can go drop your questions in there. You can do it completely anonymously if you want, and we will cover as many of those as possible. In addition to that, two other quick important things. One, please, if you have not already, leave us a podcast review on your podcasting platform of choice. This helps us get in front of more listeners. It helps us improve the show. So please, if you have not, take 2 minutes to leave a review. We really appreciate your attention and your feedback. Last but not least, all of this week's AI news and the news that we don't get to on each episode is in our weekly newsletter, This Week in AI. Go to marketingainstitute.com/newsletter. It is a comprehensive brief you can get through in just a few minutes each week to get caught up to speed on everything important happening in artificial intelligence. So with that, Paul, thank you again for keeping us on top of all the news in AI this week.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for listening. We will be back with you again next week. Thanks for listening to the AI Show. Visit marketingaiinstitute.com to continue your AI learning journey and join more than 60,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to the weekly newsletter, downloaded the AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken our online AI courses, and engaged in the Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.